Okay, so we're starting a discussion on Lechem MISHNE. Why isn't that working? Okay, we'll use this one. Okay, so Lechem MISHNE is essentially the obligation that we have that all every Shabbos meal and every meal of Chag, we are obligated to have 2 loaves of bread at the meal. Have you ever noticed that every Shabbos and holiday meal? Sorry? So that's what we're going to learn about. We're going to learn about where this comes from. What are the obligations of having Lechem MISHNE? What are the obligations of having 2 loaves of bread at the Shabbos and Yom Tov meals? Okay? That's where all of that. It's called Lechem MISHNE. So look here on the first page there. We're going to start with the Gemara, which is the source for the halacha. We're going to learn about the source the halacha is. Yeah, leave it alone. It's okay. Okay, so the source of halacha is like this. Tanur Rabbanan, our sages taught. Mishnah H text. Shochach pas betanur. A person forgot bread in his oven. The kiddush alav hayoim, and Shabbos started. So again, he has bread in his oven before Shabbos started, and then Shabbos started. So what's the problem? What's the problem here? No? What's the problem? He left bread in his oven on before Shabbos started. You can't take it out. That's the problem. So sorry, it's a prohibition called Redias Hapas. It means like this. Let's learn a second. Let's learn. Let's understand what Redias Hapas is. There is the way they used to have oven was like this. They had a brick oven, and hot fire on the bottom, and then the stone would also get very hot, or the brick. And they would do is they would take the bread. Let's just say this is the wall of the oven. I'm just use a book, but whatever. This is the wall of the oven, and then they would take the bread, would actually stick to bake it. The bread would stick to the sides, literally stick, and then it would bake, and then as it would bake, as the side got harder, it would start to separate, and it was a whole art to know how to take it down. In the Gemara's language, it's called Redias Hapas, lowering the bread or taking down the bread. So there's a whole art to know how to take off the bread. So that art is, do that on Shabbos. Redias Hapas. So says the Gemara, Shochach pas betanur, he forgot bread in his oven. The kiddush alav and Shabbos started. So says the Gemara, matzilin mazain shalish sodos. You can take down bread for 3 meals. Why? Because like you said, it's a mitzvah to eat. So even though it's forbidden, even it's forbidden to take it down, the prohibition is only rabbinic, and for the mitzvah you can take it down. And you can tell other people, you guys come, take your bread for yourself. I have tons of bread in my oven, take for your meals also. I can only take down from my meals. The rest of the stuff is going to stay there and get burnt. So whoever else wants, come take bread for your meal. But they're only for their mitzvah. Only for the mitzvah. No, it's not mitzvah dever. It's allowed. It's only mitzvah dever is only if you're allowed to, like stealing for the sake of doing for the sake of a mitzvah. But it's only drabanan. Only rabbanan. Only rabbinic. And they allowed for the mitzvah. And the Gemara says ukshurayda, and when he takes down the bread, lo yirda b'marda, he shouldn't use the special like spoon that's meant for here it says a paddle. There's a special like a spatula. You know what spatula is? Yeah. Special spatula they would use to take the bread off. Don't use that. Ela b'sakin, use a knife. So that way, when you're doing this thing, do it with a shinui, do it with some change. So that way it like reminds you, hey, you're not really supposed to be doing this. I'm only doing this as a mitzvah. What? Depends what kind of muktzah. Okay. Gemara says, is that the case? But on the Rabbi Shmuel, like Sasakol Malacha, the pasuk says, "Don't do any malacha." Yotzat Keshev, there's a pas she chachma ben malacha. So Rabbi Shmuel says that lowering the bread is permissible, and therefore, why do I have to use a knife? It's not prohibited on Shabbos. Just take it down. Says the Gemara, we try to make as much change as possible. So to remind us that it's Shabbos, even though it's not technically a malacha, because I didn't create anything, but it's a skilled technique to take down the bread. So therefore the Gemara says, do some change when you're doing it for the mitzvah. Okay, so now it comes like this. The truth is that this Gemara is not really this little part we just read is not part of Lechem MISHNE, but it's going to come up later when we learn a different source. So I'm putting it in now.
It wouldn't apply nowadays, right?
Today's a different story. So you don't have that skill. But today I have other problems with opening and closing the oven, because opening and closing the oven triggers the machine. That's a bigger problem. So
it's still hot, the oven.
If the oven is on and you open the oven, then a bunch of hot air goes out, right? And then the machine has to rework again to heat it up again. And that's a problem. So the only way you can do that is if you have Shabbos mode. And what Shabbos mode does is, depending on what kind of oven you have, a lot of Shabbos modes they do is, they stop. So even if you open it, it's not going to turn the machine back on. That's one solution. Another solution is if you leave the oven a little bit open, so the hot air is always escaping. And because it's always escaping, it always has to constantly be reworking. And it's not good for your oven. It's not good for your oven or your house, it's true. But it's a doable thing. I've done it before. Leave the oven a little bit open, and the hot air is constantly going out a little bit. And then when you open it, it's not a problem. Okay. So, but this wasn't the most important part of the subject here. But this halacha, this idea of lowering the bread on Shabbos is going to come up later. And that's why I'm learning it now. So let's just put that on the shelf for a second, put that aside. Now we're getting into discussion of the actual Lechem MISHNE and where it comes from. Rav Chizda says, a person should always be prepared and spend money so he can honor the Shabbos. Shenebar, as the pasuk says, it was on the 6th day, and they prepared that which they brought. This is talking about the people in the desert when they got the manna. You could see it there in the English under the Hebrew there. When they got the manna, they would prepare on Friday for what they're going to eat on Shabbos. And from there we learn that a person should prepare before Shabbos to honor the Shabbos. Yes? So you're asking before about cooking before Shabbos. It's a mitzvah. Then the Gemara says, Rabbi says, on Shabbos, a person is obligated to break bread on 2 loaves. Why? Because the pasuk says, Lechem MISHNE. They had double bread. Why do they have double bread?
Not like break bread.
We're going to learn about that. That's a good question.
But it's not like
not like the expression break bread as in we're eating a meal, but actually literally cut 2 loaves of bread or have 2 loaves of bread. We're going to learn the details of that. You have to cut both loaves or just have both loaves. We'll learn about that soon. But here we're learning that you have to have, lefsoya means to break bread. To break bread on 2 loaves. That's what the Gemara says here. Why? Because the pasuk says Lechem MISHNE, double portion of bread. When did the Jews get a double portion of bread? What is the pasuk? Yes. So Lechem MISHNE, where does Lechem MISHNE come from? From the manna. On Friday afternoon, they came outside and they saw they had double portion. Hashem gave every single day exactly the right amount of manna for each person in the house. Right? Omer lagogolos, the pasuk says. Exactly omer for each person. And anything that was left over was rotten and inedible. So every single morning, they were only able to eat the fresh manna from that day. Friday, they come outside and they see double portion. They come to Moshe and they say, Moshe, what's the double portion for? What?
Transporting the manna.
They brought it on Friday.
Oh,
so on Friday, they woke up and they saw a double portion of manna. And they asked Moshe Rabbeinu, what's this? And Moshe told them, tomorrow is Shabbos. And on Shabbos, no manna is going to fall. So today you have double for tomorrow also. And from here, we learn that a person has to have double bread at the Shabbos meal. So the person wants to know, where does the source come from? If we have Lechem MISHNE, 2 loaves of bread, answer from the manna. One per family. There was an omer for each person in the family.
I know, but think about it. How are you going to teach the whole bread?
Oh, the manna itself? The manna itself, the Gemara discusses in Yuma. It's a different subject that the Gemara discusses that it had different flavors. They had other stuff. The Gemara in Yuma discusses, first of all, they were able to buy things. There were merchants who used to come to the desert to sell them stuff. The Gemara in Yuma discusses that. And the Omer also, the mana also tasted whatever flavor you wanted. There's a few shurim I have online, a few videos online on Gemara. You can go check it out.
Mine was like bread.
Yeah, it was like bread, but it didn't exactly look like that. Anyway, again, you can look in Gemara Yuma. There's a discussion there. We have a few videos online on that as well. Okay, so first, now already we know what's the source for double portion, the double loaf of bread at the Shabbos and Yom Tov meal. Answer from the mana. Okay. Now, you know something interesting also. One of the reasons why we cover the bread? Why do we cover the bread on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So one reason is because really, in the order of brachas, what comes first, bread or wine? Bread. And yet on Shabbos, we're making bracha on the wine first. So we cover the wine, we cover the bread, not to embarrass the bread. That's one reason. Another reason is because of the mana. How does covering the bread help for the mana? Covered in what? Dew. That's right. The pasuk says it was dew on the ground, mana, and then dew on top. So because the dew was covered, the mana was covered, and our challah comes from the mana, because we have 2 loaves of bread, just like they had 2 loaves there. That's why we cover the challah, just like the mana. So let's finish with this Gemara, and then we'll continue tomorrow. More details. Okay, Amar Rav Ashi says, Chazina leil Rav Kana. I saw Rav Kana. Denakat tarti. They took 2 loaves, ubatza chada, and he only cut 1. So even though they only cut 1 challah, he still had 2 challahs on the table. Amar, and he explained, Loktu ksiv. It says they gathered double portion. It doesn't say they ate double portion. It says they gathered double portion. So me too. I gathered double portion by having 2 challahs on my table, but I'm only cutting 1. This is what Rav Kana said. Rab Zeda have a batzah kulishirus, but Rab Zeda would actually cut every loaf. He would cut both. You following? Yeah. He would cut both, not just have 2 and cut 1. So we had one opinion, Rav Kana, which has 2 loaves of bread, only cut 1, and Rav Ashi cut both loaves. Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi. So Ravina told Rav Ashi, "It looks like you're starving. It looks like you're overindulging. You're taking every single loaf of bread. You got to eat hadinut. It's more subtle, more edel, more refined. Eat 1 loaf of bread once in front of you. When you finish that, go to the next one. Don't just take every single one." Amar lei. So Rav Ashi explained to Ravina, "Kivan the kol yemeloi avid, because I never do this. Va'idna di took avid, but now I am doing this. Lo mischazik k'rir basana. It doesn't look like I'm overindulging. Why? Because it's only for Shabbos. Yeah. So you can see that it's special for Shabbos. Rav Ami v'Rav Asi ki mikler urifta de eruva shari aluim. It says like this: Rav Ami and Rav Asi, when they were given the bread of an eruv. Anybody know what the bread of an eruv is? We learned this. What's the bread of the eruv? When you have a bunch of different homes facing a courtyard, and the courtyard is shared, and you want to make it. Shlomo Melech said. Remember Shlomo Melech? Remember? Shlomo said you take one loaf of bread that everybody shares, and that way the whole property becomes like one big private domain, and then they can carry in the courtyard. So when they were given that, they would make the bracha on that. So they explained why. Why? Amri, because we already did 1 mitzvah with this bread by making an eruv. We'll do another mitzvah with it. So now what do we see? Eating the Lechem MISHNE is not just a nice thing, but it's actually a mitzvah. And God willing, we're going to see, maybe tomorrow or the day after, we'll see how much time we have. Getting late already. But we're going to see that according to some opinions, actually doraita. It's a biblical obligation to have 2 loaves of bread. Okay, so now, so far we have like this. What's the source of the loaf, double loaf? From the mana. And do you have to eat every one of the loaves? We don't know yet. We had one opinion that said he used to cut 1. Another opinion said he used to cut both. And we're going to see, what does it mean he used to cut both? Did he cut both? Did he eat both? And that's going to make a difference. Do I have to cut all the loaves of bread on my table? Do I have to eat from every single loaf, every challah on the table? Or do I just have to have two and cut one? These are going to change the halachas, understanding this Gemara, understanding this story here. Clear? Okay, wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day.